And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Bryan Armentrout with the Food Safety Foundation with my good friend Jill Stuber, the food safety coach. Jill, how are you doing this morning?
Good. Good morning, Bryan, and good morning to everybody out there. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. How's the weather for you today?
You know, we've got spring showers, and we're loving it just because it was so dry.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's good. We like it. That's why I've got the sunflowers in back. Kind of remind me of those other days. So,
Yep.
how about by you out in Colorado?
It's not. It's going to be a decent day today. Not as warm as it has been. Currently, it's 44 degrees and it's windy, and which is kind of a bummer because I got my wife a scooter here not too long ago, and she's itching to try it out. So we finally got the registration back and the insurance and all that type of stuff. She's got a cute little helmet. Nice. So she wants to go try out her scooter, but it's so windy out. She's worried that it's going to knock her over. So hopefully she's going to go out and do some scooting around today.
When the time is right, it'll all work out. So
absolutely. So thanks, Jill, for joining me. And one of the things that, you know, as we were talking about and getting ready for the show here today. Oh, by the way, everybody, please type in and say good morning to us and let us know where you're from. As Jill said, I'm out here in Colorado, and Jill, you're in Minnesota, which is kind of funny. I'm watching on Hulu. My wife and I are watching Fargo. So, which is really, we'd heard good things about the series. Of course, we've seen the movie a long time ago, but the series is really good. So we're enjoying that. So, but it's funny. So it's actually not Fargo. It's set mostly in Duluth and Bemidji.
They're, you know, proximity. They're all pretty similar.
Yeah. Okay. So of course, I'm driving my wife nuts because then I like doing voices and things like that. So I'm dropping into that really nice, thick Minnesota accent there. Don't you know? Oh, and it's funny because some of the words that they use, and my family's from Iowa, and so that crossover there, it's very similar. Stephanie, good morning. Oh, wonderful. I mean, I guess good afternoon in Munich, Germany. Wow, Stephanie and I, good to see you. We were chatting here a bit before this, so I believe you know her as well, Jill.
Yes. Good morning, Stephanie.
So one of the things, Jill, of course, that we like to do, and this is my fault because I didn't ask you this before we went online, is we have to have our oh, you are so good. You're so good.
I knew this was part of it, so I got it.
You're awesome. Everybody, please, you know, take your morning drink or afternoon, and please join us for a sip. Oh, that was a big one. That was a nice big sip. I like that.
Now we're ready.
Definitely. So good to see everybody. So today, I mean, it's kind of, we're going on a theme here, and we've been talking recently with some really good experts around something that's been really high profile in the food industry and food safety and things like that. And it's culture, right? It's really, how do you demonstrate it? How do you build it? How do you nurture it? All these type of things. And so that's why I was so excited to have you on, Jill.
Well, and I'm excited to be here because, like you said, it's something that it's had more visibility lately, and we're talking more about it. But really, it's something that we actually started talking about like decades ago. Yeah. And so it's really fun to come back and explore, like, where are we at and what is it that we are looking for to be able to move forward and into this space that we all have this want to move into. So glad to be here because it's, you know, we're all better together. So having people jump in and share stories and tell us what's happening really helps us all learn from that.
Oh, absolutely. And again, with this process here, what we're doing, right? This is a live stream and it's interactive, and these are designed to answer your questions and get feedback. So the more you're able to contribute to this conversation, the better it's going to be. So as soon as people are able to type in your comments on any of our forums, right? We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Please let us know what your comments are, and we'll comment on those too. So that's a good way to approach it. One of the things that we were looking at, and you had sent me a LinkedIn note on this too, is there's a nice video from Simon Sinek that's going around right now. And he makes a good point, because I'm guilty about this, Joel, is that, you know, I always refer to hard and, you know, soft skills, but he made a good point on that.
He did. You know, it's really a great perspective, because when we define things, and our brain likes to do that, right? If things are good or bad, black or white, whatever. And so we have hard skills and soft skills. And implicitly, that kind of tells us that hard skills are more objective and perhaps more important than these soft skills. So Simon really gives us this challenge to look at them as human skills. And how do these human skills combine with these hard skills to really help us have this more well-rounded picture of where we want to go and how we use both sets of skills.
Right, absolutely.
So, incredible.
And I think it's really important for those sets of skills because we work in a technical area, right? I was a microbiologist when I started off. I'm a very introverted person. It's not natural for me, right? And so doing those things, like if the stereotypical salesman, right? The, hey, how you doing? Shaking hands and all these type of things, which we stereotypically view as these soft skills. That's not the case, right? And I think Simon really hit it when he said what you said, Jill, is human skills. It's how we actually get along with each other.
Well, and it's interesting you talk about the technical side, because I too, my background and experience is all technical. And so through that process, we're taught how to always have answers, how to always lead with data, how to, we used to joke and say, the data will set you free. And I remember a moment where when I worked in poultry and I was like, the data is not setting me free. Right. We have a gap here. And that's that human skill portion that is designed to help fill in that gap, or even maybe help shape the conversation before the data.
Right, absolutely. Because this is one of the failings that I would see in quality, especially, where quality people would think that, okay, you have a standard SQF, BRC, whatever. And okay, all I have to do is write a bunch of documents, sit in my office, write all this stuff up, put them on tablets, come down the mountain and give them to everybody in the plant. And all of a sudden everybody's going to go, oh, great. Now we know what to do. And that never, ever
work.
No, never. But they think it does, right? Just because you write something down doesn't mean that people are going to do it. And one of the worst things that will happen then when you're building that culture then, Jill, is that you end up with this hidden processes that you don't even know about. So when a new employee comes on board, the supervisor will tell the new employee, yeah, here's the work instruction that quality guy wrote. Here's how we actually do it.
Right.
And you don't even know until it all blows up.
And the funniest part is that's the stuff that we would actually love to know so that everybody can do that. Because if it's working, why wouldn't we want to share that and shout it out to everyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things I learned when I was putting together work instructions with my plants and processes and things like that is I would go out and interview the employees who were doing that task. And what was very interesting with this then too, Jill, was that it was always, it's very automatized, because when you're doing something, you get good at it and it just becomes part of what you do. So if you talk with somebody who's running, let's say, a filling machine, you say, okay, well, pretend I'm a new employee, teach me how to run this filling machine. And they would say, well, what do you mean? You just run the filling machine, right? It's like asking a really good golfer who just hit a great shot, how do you do that? And they're like, well, what do you mean? You just hit the golf ball, right? It's automatic. So there was this process then of drawing that out and saying, okay, well, you come in and what's the first thing you do in the morning? Well, we need to make sure the machine is set up. Okay, well, what does set up mean? Oh, well, it means the heater heads need to be clean. Okay, well, what happens if the heater heads aren't clean? Oh, geez, that's a giant mess if the heater heads aren't clean, because you're going to get sticky seals. It's not going to get through the right film layers to seal it up correctly. The temperature is going to be wrong. On and on and on, right? And then all that information starts coming out. And what appears to be simple, what I've found is with any process in a plant, never is, ever.
No, well, and I just love learning about how our brains work for us and also maybe sometimes seemingly don't work well for us. And that's a great example because, right, our brain actually doesn't want to expend a lot of energy. It always wants to save it for when the bear is coming to attack us. Of course, that's not normally happening. But what we do, right, we just go into that autopilot and we just know these things to do. So really working with folks to understand, like, what are the parts you do? They're so used to doing them that they don't necessarily even articulate what it is because it's become part of that habit. Yeah. And so how do you skillfully pull that out so that you understand more about that process and what they're doing? And it's really an amazing science behind that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. One of the points that Simon made in the video that we were watching too was, relative to these hard and soft skills, these people skills, was the phrase he said in there is, "Don't be a jerk." Right?
Right.
Which is 100% true. And it's something that we overlook. But again, as we were talking about, if you go into a production facility or anywhere for that matter, but especially it's really clear in the production facility, right? You have a group of people who work closely together, and they've been doing this hopefully for a long period of time. And if you ask anybody and you say, okay, who are the jerks that work here, right? Every person is going to go, that guy, that guy, that guy. And if you ask somebody and they don't know, well, guess what? They're probably the jerk, right? And they're the ones who make life difficult. They're the ones who cause stress. They're the ones who bring drama, right? They make life in any operation more difficult.
They do, and conversely, right? If you ask like, hey, who's the person who, when you need help, you can go to, and who's the person that has all those answers and is kind of like your own in-house Siri, right? Everybody knows who that person is too. And so how do you find those folks and kind of work with each of them, because they all have fantastic skills. It's just maybe how you work through them, how you present them, how you maybe shift them a little bit. So instead of being the jerk, you actually can have that really, the knowledge and skills they bring shine through and be seen as valuable. So,
right. Well, and I mean, we've all worked with people in our career who are exceptionally knowledgeable and know a whole lot about particular topics, but they're difficult to work with, and they may have a giant ego. And, if you come to ask them the question, they're going to make sure that that they're smarter than you, right? And in those type of situations, Jill, you'll find yourself even hesitating to go talk with that person because it's so painful. So they've worked really, really hard on building their technical skill set, right? All these things that we think we need all the time, but they completely neglected that soft side, that people side of the skill set.
Yeah. And, I think for the most part, people aren't intentional. They're not intentionally doing these things. That's just part of who we are and our personalities. So sometimes it's often about awareness, right? And, approaching that with kindness. So how do you do that and just say, hey, you have such great information. Did you know sometimes it comes off like this? So sometimes it's just approaching those with kindness and helping people go, oh, I didn't realize that when I did X, Y, and Z, people thought it meant A, B, C.
That's a good point. And I mean, part of it too is we don't know what people are going through, right? So somebody's grandmother may be really, really ill and they're worried about that, and you don't know about that. So you always need to give them the benefit of the doubt, I think, is a good way to look at it.
Absolutely. Sometimes, right, even I'll be the first to say there are moments I don't always approach with kindness. And that's one of the challenges I have for myself. How do I approach it being open-minded and with kindness? Yeah. Because that goes a lot further than having like you said, the other side where you're like, I know they're out to get me. I know they're just not playing on the same team. Like, that's not usually what it is. So just shifting that thought process.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. So one of the things, I mean, this whole process of how other people see you and interact with you, right, is continuous, right? Like you go through your whole life figuring that out. One of the lessons I learned when I was in the world of work was, and I didn't know this until somebody told me, is that when I'm working on something in my office, when I concentrate, I get a look on my face that's not very nice. It looks like I'm mad. So I'll kind of be like this, really thinking and concentrating on what I'm doing. If someone was coming to see me, they would look in my office and interpret that as I was angry.
Yes. And that's a really good point, because especially when we're in food safety and quality, right, we're often in these roles where we're investigating, we're asking questions, we're trying to better understand. And so we may have that serious look. We may have questions that seem blunt or that are like the inquisitor, and even just, how do we shift that up a little bit to maybe say, hey, share with me. Can you tell me? How do we create that to work to our advantage and still get the collaboration we need and, help people even want to come to us?
Exactly. Well, and this is something I think that's become highlighted in this era of not traveling and all of these type of things is if you were on the road. And so, of course, if you worked in quality and management, things like this, you were always traveling out to the plants and things like this. And lots of times you're traveling with someone on your team or whatever. That interaction outside of the the facility. So having dinner at night and getting ready in the morning, having that awful breakfast in the hotel and these type of things, that interactive piece, we don't have that right now.
No. And so, taking time out to still build relationships and to reach out to people. And more often than not, we have shared experiences, and maybe not the exact same, but we've all felt happiness. We've all felt disappointment and frustration. And that's really that empathy piece of being human and going, hey, I feel you. Like, that sucks. I get what you're going through. I haven't done that exactly, but what's most helpful right now? How can I help? So
absolutely. We're getting some awesome comments here. So Baha, good morning, of course, my friend. Good to see you. And Raphael, always great when you join us. So Raphael has a reading suggestion here, The Principle of Charity. Understand kindness. Nice. I like that.
That's awesome. I love having book recommendations. There's so many good ones out there.
Absolutely. And so Stephen is delivering food and wondering about ghost kitchens and delivering food and things like that, right? So definitely, that's a food safety concern. And I'm not sure if I can link that in really with our topic right now, though.
Well, and I'll have to say, I don't know a lot about ghost kitchens. So I may have to know a little bit more about what that is and what that means. But
we keep track of all the contacts in here and things like that, Stephen. So I'll do a little looking into that, and we'll see if we can get you an answer on that.
Super.
Coronavirus food breakout, absolutely. Definitely. When you kind of look back on your career, Jill, and I mean, there's certain people that stick out, and that for me, there was a plant manager in my past who was just a fantastic leader, and it wasn't because he was the most technically adept. He was very good at his job, but his people skills were off the charts. And I remember I was sitting in his office, I was visiting his plant, and one of his supervisors came in, and there was a problem on the floor. And the supervisor was in a panic and everything. And the plant manager says, okay, well, that's okay. We'll get through this. Tell me what's going on. And so the supervisor explains the situation, and he kind of nods his head and listens very politely. And by the time he finished explaining, both of us knew what to do. But instead of saying, go do this and go do this, and this is what, he said, thank you for explaining that. What would you like us to do? And I went, oh. And the supervisor thought about it. He said, I think we should do this. And it was the right answer. And the plant manager said, that's excellent. Let's go do that. Right. And I was like, wow, that is an amazing lesson on leadership right there. Teaching him how to make those decisions. Right. And we hear that axiom of don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions, which is a very hard way to explain it. But the way he did it, man, and I always took that example as that's how you build culture, because whenever you went to his plant, he had an amazing culture.
Which is fantastic because, we talk about how do we move so that everybody really feels they have skin in the game when it comes to food safety. Right. How do we empower people to really step into that space and make decisions? And that's a great example of how you do it responsibly. One of the things that I look at is, sometimes when empowerment first came out, people were like, great, you're empowered. You go take that over. People are like, whoa, not ready.
Right.
And that's kind of an irresponsible way to pass that off to someone without helping them be aligned and understand what they're working into. But what you just described is kind of that foundation of, dare I say, coaching philosophy. It's that we all have these answers inside. It's just drawing them out and helping us understand that we have this knowledge and we are able to work through these things. Yeah. So helping people, and like you said, just going, well, what would you do? What do you think is the next best step? Let's talk about it. It's so powerful.
And I mean, it's deceptively simple, but it's so hard to do.
It is. Well, if you think about it, we're going against everything we've learned for years. Right? Even through school, it was raise your hand first when you have the answer. Who's going to be done first? Who's fastest? Who's smartest? So we're really trying to break out of some of that learned behavior all our life to sit back and go, hey, I don't have all the answers. what do you think is the next best thing? How do we find those answers? What do you want to do? So.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and one of the quickest ways to kill that is to give people responsibility, but no authority to actually do it.
Yes.
Right? Because then you're giving them all the negative side of things, but no ability to do anything about it. And that'll ruin that really quickly.
Oh, definitely. Right. One of the things that I think I hear a lot from clients and other leaders that I've run into food safety and quality is really understanding where that sits for each role. And so that importance of, are you responsible for stopping shipments? Can you make a call on recall? Can you call suppliers for this or customers? It seems so apparent, but yet when you are in that moment and you're like, can I pull the trigger? Yes or no? Having that conversation and knowing what those limits are and having, dare I say permission, but maybe this shared agreement on what that looks like and who does it is so important for us to move quickly and make those decisions.
Right. So one of the things I always used to, and every opportunity I had, I would always reinforce with my quality managers would be, hey guys, there's really 3 buckets of things that you're going to be looking at. There's going to be operational data, pounds per man hour, yields and efficiencies, things that the plant needs to run. That's great. That's information we can help the plant manager collect so that he can run the plant efficiently, which is what everybody needs. The next group is food quality. These are parameters of what the consumer expects from the product, right? It's like our coffee again, right? So when I have a cup of coffee, I have an expectation of what the roast should taste like, how the half and half mixes in and swirls up, and it just gives you that whole experience, right? If that's off, I'm going to complain as a consumer, right? So it's your job as the quality manager to understand what those expectations are so that we meet those. And then I said to them too, I said, the third bucket is by far the most important, and that's food safety. That's easy, right? It's a pass, fail, yes, no, black, white thing. If you have the slightest inkling in any capacity that there's a food safety issue, you have absolute authority, and I expect you to stop it. And I will back you on 100%, and you can count on that. You don't have to worry about that, right? But don't mix that up with food quality, because food quality is a business decision, right? We need to work together as a team and look at the data and these type of things. But food safety, you don't have to do that, right? You're in charge of food safety, and you need to make sure that that authority is kept intact. And laying out that groundwork, to your point, Jill, is super important.
Well, I think just like you articulated here, it really needs to be explicit, not just implied with, hey, do you have the responsibility or the authority to do that? Like, having that conversation can really help people truly kind of grasp that and say, yes, that is what I do, and we are aligned. And so,
yeah, one of the things that I learned on that lesson side of things is I refer to this, Jill, as spheres of responsibility. So if I'm an operator on the line, and we would write this in the work instructions, here's what you're monitoring, here's what you're measuring, and things like that. If something isn't quite right, here's what you can do. So we'll say like weight. Let's say that the weight is starting to drift on the product. Adjust the machine, right? And you're trained to manage and the machine and things like that. You have total authority. That's your process. Go back and recheck it. Did you fix it? If not, there's probably something else going on. So now you need to let your supervisor know. Guess what? It's now his responsibility. So now the supervisor needs to figure out what's going on. If the supervisor can't fix it, it goes to the next level. So let's say the quality manager. So now you need to pull her into that and say, hey, we've got this issue, right? And so you move up the chain, up to the plant manager, corporate, and everything else, right? So this keeps it at the correct level, and things aren't bubbling up through the organization that shouldn't bubble up, because sometimes people don't like to have responsibility, right? So if they can give it to somebody else, okay, I'm good. No, doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's very true. And that's why, like you said, being explicit on kind of what that looks like, because I think more often than not, people we are wired to be part of something bigger and a purpose. And so when we know what that is and we can align with that, we are golden. But when we're really abstract about what it looks like, and hey, just come over here and do this, for 8-10 hours a day, that maybe isn't quite aligning that purpose and that mission. So we can do better. And that's why I love talking about how not just food safety culture, but the culture in our organizations helps us really use those human skills to be more successful, and not just short-term, but long-term success.
Right. Absolutely. That's a good point, right? You're matching up, and this is kind of coming full circle to what we started this with, right? Is you're matching up the hard and the soft skills. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I would do if I had opportunities in plants to talk with people would be to say that, yeah, you're making food for people. And mm-hmm. if you're not comfortable taking a product directly off the line, taking it home, opening it up and feeding it to your grandchildren, there's a problem, right? Mm-hmm. You need to have 100% confidence in this product. And if you don't, I need to know about it immediately, right? And that would help to bring that connection home, because a lot of times, right, it's in that abstract thing. Oh no, we're making product that goes in a truck and off it goes somewhere and we're done. No, you're not.
Mm-hmm. Nope, it's a great point.
Yeah. We're getting some amazing comments here. So Stephanie's making a good point here. Helping colleagues and employees to thrive is the greatest thing of all. I experienced it firsthand. Absolutely. One of the things I'm most proud of in my career is those people I was able to identify and mentor and help grow and get promoted. And there's people who have worked for me who are now vice presidents of quality at other companies. And I love that, right? That's an amazing feeling.
Oh, it is, right? Bringing people together. And if anybody follows me, Bryan, I know we talk about this a lot, but I'm on a mission on how do we better take care of our people in food safety and quality. They kind of live in this space where, they're part of the team, but yet they're not part of the team. And they're supposed to be technical and they're supposed to be objective. And so how do we bring in some more human skills to really help support them? And that was something that when I was managing across several plants, that was the biggest driver. I stepped into a role where they didn't even talk. Like, we did the same things, but everybody had their own SOPs, their own processes, their own worksheets. And they really, when they had problems, didn't call each other or didn't even use each other. Yeah. And so it was like, how do we come together? And that was my mission, bringing people together to say, how do we do this different? How do we support each other better so that we learn, we thrive, we have the sense of team and trust that really makes us all happy to come to work. And granted, we know the reality is we're not happy every day, but can we at least get to like even Pareto, 80-20, or even hopefully higher? So.
Absolutely. Very, very good point. And I mean, with the Food Safety Foundation, that's exactly what we're doing too, right? It's we need to collaborate on these things, right? Because there's lots of people out there who know a lot more than we do. Oh my gosh. And tapping into those people is amazingly powerful.
It really is. Very much so.
So
I just love how everyone is sharing comments and different aspects for us to look about. So, or to talk about. So thank you, everybody out there.
Yes, definitely appreciate it here. Let's see. So HR should change performance review evaluations to account for food safety ownership and accountability as a means to incentivize and not further micromanage. 100%. One of the things that I do in companies I would work for is I want to see food safety objectives in everybody's job descriptions, and ideally in how they're evaluated and if they get a bonus, right? So if the organization has a recall, God forbid, everybody should feel that failure, right? Because a lot of times, and this is a pet peeve of mine, is if something happens in an organization, they say we have a quality problem. And I'm like, what do you mean a quality problem? No, we have an operational problem. I didn't make the product, right? So let's figure out why this occurred and work backwards through the process, right? This is not a hot potato where you just hand it off to quality and say, okay, go figure out and do whatever you do. I'm going to go make more product. No.
No, and that's a great point, because, it's really interesting to see how we've evolved in understanding performance and accountability, and we've driven really hard to the point of KPIs. And I love KPIs, don't get me wrong, right? I am a kind of a closet stats geek. I have a black belt through Six Sigma and all that good stuff. So I love data. But what I realized is that, and Simon talks about this in the video, sometimes we drive so hard to just the KPIs and those metrics that the other parts get lost behind. And so how do we pull those forward and have a balance, but also, how do we move those in to be more team driven?
Right.
One of my favorite ones is when we were a USDA facility, and they would say, food safety, you guys are responsible for the number of NRs we have every year. And I went, how?
Yeah.
How are we responsible for the number that are generated? I'm like, so, even aligning with that responsibility, but it really was a team thing, right? Because there were parts that we did, there were parts operations did, maintenance, sanitation, everyone was part of it.
Yeah.
So even as you look at the KPIs, how do we really know and work together on them versus placing them on a group and saying, you're the ones who do them. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing how the collaboration needs to come together to help it all succeed.
Right. I think that's where tools, I mean, to the point that was made here with earlier comment, was that we need to look at tools like, 360 feedback and things like this, where you're actually getting opinions from other colleagues and figuring out from that standpoint. One of the things that we were talking about this before too is kind of behind the curtain of different functions of how HR works. And so this is my experience. I'm sure other companies are different. But one of the companies that I worked for, we had a senior leadership meeting every quarter with all the department heads in HR. And what we would do in those meetings is we would introduce to the team through a presentation, not with the person present, one of our key performers. And we would pitch to them why this person was important to what we were doing and how they could potentially help other groups within the company. It was brilliant. Excuse me. And it was able to get them out of that bubble and say, oh, wow, Becky's really good in this field and she's got some good skills. Let's try and cross-train her with the engineering team. And the engineering group would be like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's bring her along on some stuff, right? So it was helping to groom the key talent in the organization and bring exposure to people that, the head of procurement may never even deal with this person. So now he gets an understanding of who she is.
Wow, that's really powerful. Because, one of the things that I'm curious about that is how often people were willing to do some of that shifting away from maybe kind of their, I'm going to say, the lane that they were in. Because I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this in food safety, thought, well, I'm on this path. I need to stay in this lane if I really can, to serve the people around me and on my team the best that I can. And of course, it wasn't until I was further along in my career that I realized, perhaps I should have looked a little bit outside of food safety and quality to better build my understanding and collaboration with other teams. Yeah. So Bryan, based on kind of what you've done, what have you seen?
Well, and I mean, and I've been guilty of this too, right? It's very easy to do this. And what's ironic about this, Jill, is that we have these expectations of these other groups. So, okay, procurement group, you need to buy good product that doesn't cause recalls and food safety issues and right? We're really good at pointing the finger. But hey, what are we doing with the procurement team to help them understand what is a safe product? And if the procurement objectives are only price, and that's what they get their evaluation and their bonus on, guess what? They're not going to pay attention to that. So you have that cross linkage. One of the things that worked really well at a company I was at is we put together a supplier evaluation program where we had quality parameters and procurement parameters, and then we created a simple little XY graph of performance. But we wouldn't send that to the suppliers. We would meet with our top suppliers every quarter and go through that scorecard with them and say, okay, procurement, oh yeah, we're pretty happy. You guys are delivering product on time and there's no damage and the invoices are correct and the things that procurement's happy about. And then they would turn to my regional guy who was responsible for this and say, okay, how are we doing from a quality standpoint? Say, well, not too good, right? We're not getting COAs on product. We've been doing some testing and we're getting some non-conformance to specifications. We've been having some trouble with damaged product on the lines. And every single time in those meetings, that person who attended on behalf of the supplier was like, I didn't know this. Really? We're like, yeah. And so then we would give them the data and they would bring it back. And that worked amazingly well to improve the quality and procurement, right? So we were able to work together as a team and bring both of those up. So it was a win-win.
Well, and that's awesome because it's, you get the best of both worlds. You get to kind of stay in your lane in this. I haven't met anybody in food safety who isn't passionate about being in food safety.
Yeah.
But you also get to see this other side of what's purchasing doing or other departments. So
yeah,
that's really powerful.
Yeah. And once again, right, it all comes back to people, and we found really good people within the procurement department who got it. And right, so they were our go-to. So if we had an issue, we would talk with those people and say, hey, listen, can you help us with these issues? And boom, we would get these things resolved. Because
one of the things I love to do with people now, and once again, it was kind of the wisdom I learned as I went through my career, but I always say, okay, here's the challenge. How do you help operations solve their biggest problem? And usually I have people step back and go, well, that's their thing. That's not mine. How do I fit with that?
Right.
And I'm like, as food safety professionals, we're always asking to be brought in, to be part of things sooner. And I'm like, man, that is a powerful way to show I'm vested in what we're doing together. And whatever they are solving is going to touch with food safety anyways. So building those relationships. And so sometimes I think, how do we put on a new perspective about how we approach what we're doing or how we're going through our day? Because often we've got such a list of things that we're doing, right? Like, I need to go do this check. I need to check here. I have these inspections to complete, this data to get out, these meetings to attend. So sometimes it's kind of that heads up of, okay, what else is out here that I can really support?
Right. And you make a very good point, Jill, because if you're saying that about those other groups, they're going to be saying that about you.
Right.
Subconsciously or whatever, you're sending that message to them. You stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane, and hopefully they never meet. Okay, fine. How does that build anything? It doesn't.
No. It's all about mindset.
Yep.
It's all about how we want to work together and how we show up to work together. And I always use this example, right? Like, if we show up and we're focused on what we're doing, kind of like when you talked about in the office, when people would see you so focused, they'd kind of be like, oh, I'll back away. Instead, creating this environment where you're like, come on in. How do we do this together?
Exactly. It all comes down to that people side. One of the lessons I used to teach my quality managers, and the numbers don't matter, but I would use these numbers just to illustrate it. I called it the 10-80-10 rule. Is that, and I would say, listen, guys, here in your plant, 80% of the people are here doing their job and they love doing what they do. They do well. They will we'll give them direction and they'll do it. They go home at night and they watch their kids play baseball and their life is good. Give them everything they need to do that, and they'll support you and be loyal and love working with you. There's another 10% that's not enough for. Right? They're looking for something more. They want to be promoted. They want to go to the next step. They're curious. They're asking questions all the time. They're the ones that are pushing back and say, well, why do we do it this way? And these type of things. You need to find those people. They're the most important people in the organization if you want to improve. You need to coach them. You need to develop them. You need to help them figure out what it is that they want for their next level. Because if you don't, they leave. Right? They're going to go somewhere that does that. And from a people side, those are by far the people that are going to help you and support you and make you better. Now, on the other side, and it's not 10%, but on the other side of that spectrum are the people we were talking about before, right? The jerks, the people who cause trouble and strife and grief, and they're really not happy there. They're there because it's a job, and they take every sick day they can, and they're causing trouble and these type of things. And really, it's less than 1%. From a food safety standpoint, those are the ones who could potentially do things that could be dangerous, right? Contaminate food or things like that. I'll show them, right? You need to find those people as well. And like we said before, everybody knows who they are. You need to help them find alternate employment opportunities as quickly as you can.
Yeah. And I know yesterday, Bryan and I talked a little bit beforehand. And one of the things we talked about was the different values that we have. And actually what that reminds me of is part of that conversation, because, I love that we've moved from just telling people how to do things to providing more of the why. Like, why are we taking temperatures? Why are we doing this? And one of the things that I've been reading a lot about lately is that we bring, like, as humans, we all have our own set of values. And even if somebody says, this is how I want you to behave and show up at work, we're always looking for how does that fit with the values that I have? And so no matter where someone falls on that scale that you just talked about, but especially for that group that's maybe not as happy, how do we tie into one of their values to help lift them and raise all of us up? Because often we're looking for that spot on how do things fit to really help us have that buy-in and support the greater good in that cause. And that's definitely a tricky area, because our companies have values and talk about how we want to be. So how do we link that into my value of like mine? You know, I like integrity and freedom. So how do you play into what's important to me so that we can do it together?
Mm. That's a very good point. Very good point, right? It's very easy to look at everything from our perspective, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. And you know, it's always evolving, right? Before it was very command and control. We'll just do this because I said so. Yeah. So we have made so much progress, and you know, it's looking ahead to what else is there and how do we have even better alignment and close some of those gaps and really value everyone, because it goes back to that human side again.
Right. Yeah. One of the things, and this is part of the danger of being a technical person as well, is that if there's a problem in the plant, right, we want to roll our sleeves up and go fix it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's the wrong thing to do. And it's counterintuitive. I had a quality manager who was extremely gifted on the technical side of things. He knew more about filling machines and aseptic processes than anybody in the plant. As a result, he spent a lot of time on the floor doing things. So he would be helping the maintenance guys mm-hmm. fix a machine or all these type of things. And I would tell him, I'm like, that's not your job. I said, what I want to find is to come into the plant. You don't know I'm coming. I walk into the plant. I find you at your desk. Your feet are kicked up on the desk. Your hands are behind your head. You're staring at the ceiling and you're thinking, because that's how the plant gets better. It's not reacting to the problems. It's thinking about what do we need to be doing in 1, 2, 5 years in order to meet those next level of expectations and get things to that level, right? That's what managers are for. And we're there to solve problems, sure, but reserving time to do that is very important.
Oh, I completely agree that's, I don't know if I would want to say underrated or undervalued, but we've once again kind of grown up in this space of we have to go, 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 go. Mm-hmm. If we're being successful, that looks like action all the time. Right. And we, you know, when you step away from that, then it kind of makes people go, well, if I don't see you doing all this action, then you must not be part of the team. And we had a question a little bit about a toxic manager and perhaps mm-hmm. ego in the way. And I really like to think about ego as kind of ego has good things, right? It helps us, but it also helps protect us. Mm-hmm. And so ego comes up when we think we're in a situation like, oh, I need to put on this mask so that people think I'm being really active in getting things done, that I did this report perfectly, I did this the right way. And it kind of, it helps protect us so that we give the persona that we believe others want from us. And so, you know, working through that and going, hey, if somebody sees my feet kicked up on the desk, that's okay. Right. Because I'm doing this, you know, and helping someone even navigate through what are the things that cause that ego to come up. And that's really about building trust for them just internally, that it's okay. People want to see the real you. We don't always want to see the ego, but we've been trained for years and years and years that ego kind of drives us. So, you know, that's one of the great things about the human side. We have all these challenges, but once again, when we're together and our intent is that people bring the good forward and we lead with kindness and we don't make assumptions, then we can get better together.
Right. I think that's a fantastic way to kind of swing this back around. And I think this is why, and why I'm drawn to this topic around food safety culture, why I've been, communicating so much about this, right? Is we think that the technical side is building all these skills and your talent stack and all these type of things. But guess what? The human side, the people side, the quote unquote soft side is in a lot of ways harder to develop, right? And I think that's why sometimes, to your point, Jill, people put up these barriers and these walls to help protect themselves because they feel vulnerable in those spaces.
Yeah. Well, and it's around us, right? Whether we see it on TV or social media or articles, for a long time, there's been this one picture of what success looks like. And so we're all navigating through to say, does that picture really fit for me? What does success look like for me? What does it look like when we're together as a team? And so we're really asking people to step outside their comfort zone and try things on. And so being really mindful of how we do that, because that is scary. At the end of the day, that change can be scary. But there's also tools we can do to help navigate through that. And once again, all the human side.
Yep, absolutely. I think, so kind of, wow, time flies, 45 minutes already.
Wow.
For closing for me on that, I think one of the things that is really important is, regardless of the company that you're in, we tend to become insular and we look at things internally and we say, okay, is this product okay? Well, what does okay mean? Does it meet spec? Is the pH okay? Is the salt level okay? Whatever. No. Okay means, number one, you don't kill anybody, right? Your food safety is always, always, always maintained. And then that food quality piece, right? And understanding what the customer and the consumer, especially the consumer, expect for your product is absolutely key. So my kind of closing piece of advice on this, and I'd love to get your comments on this too, Joe, is that the better you understand what the consumer loves and values your products for, and you're able to advocate that in the company, the better off you're going to be. That's going to be a huge linkage because you're able to step outside, because that's everybody, right? Everybody, that's quality, procurement, logistics, legal, communication, everybody. That should be everybody's concern.
No, I certainly agree with that, because at the end of the day, that's our purpose and mission. Like, we are making a product that we want consumers to love, right? And doing that together. And sometimes in quality, we'll fall back on the technical things, like, well, here's what the spec has, or here's what the data says. And so, really stepping into a space where you can be curious and go, what does this look like? All that aside, what's the practical part, or what's our gut telling us about this? And it's amazing what people know and have, and just allowing that to come out and have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. Wow. Great conversation, right? Part of the area I think we need to talk more about in what we do. And so, Jill, I really appreciate it, the Food Safety Coach, all you're doing to help promote this. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I love that you're in this space too, and helping in a little bit different track, but it's all about being better together. And when we open these conversations up, it helps us know, it's okay to venture down this path. It's okay to ask these questions. And not only is it okay, but there's lots of people out here who want to support you in this journey. So you don't feel like you have to do it alone. We're all in this together, and we will get where we want to be.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody who joined in the conversation. Amazing, right? Tons of feedback, tons of good information. Take this and use this within your jobs and your roles, and help to expand your circle of influence too. So thanks again, Jill, for joining me. And once again, everybody, Food Safety Chat, we're here every Friday. So we'll be back next Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. East Coast. So thanks, everybody, and enjoy your weekend. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.